Hello, YouTubers. Hi. So, I'm always getting asked similar questions. I always wanted an electric skateboard. I used to skate a lot as a kid. Yeah, the concept of having, a portable vehicle that is in some cases faster than having a car ultimately settled it for me was my wife and we saved up and had our first European holiday about 2 years ago now, just before our boy was born. Actually, my wife was pregnant, and we did 6 weeks in Europe, Germany, France, Italy, Spain. So yeah, it was pretty full on. We did way more than we should have in the time that we had. Every day was spent walking, lots of walking. You get up early in the morning, walk somewhere, have something to eat, walk to the train, subway or wherever, go to another place, and then walk around all day. And at the end of the day, you'd have dinner and nearly pass out just because you literally haven't stopped all day. Once that holiday was over, I started thinking about there's got to be better ways to move humans around. If everyone had their own little portable transportation device that allowed them to get places quickly. And then, I went through all sorts of different crazy ideas, and then it dawned on me the obvious thing is the skateboard. It's light, it's compact, it's the perfect electric vehicle, really. And yeah, it's a skateboard. The beauty of it is its simplicity. There's really not that many moving parts. It's just two axles essentially with wheels and a platform that tilts and it goes wherever you want it to. It's quite intuitive. It's a really easy thing. Most people can learn how to ride a skateboard fairly easily, and as it turns out, electric skateboards are actually very easy to learn because there's a brake, so you won't roll away out of control. You can stop. So yeah, after the European holiday, I made my first electric skateboard and never really looked back. As I made my first one, I realized, firstly, it was very difficult. It took months of reading, research, what to buy, how to connect it. I knew nothing about RC motor controllers or lipos or chargers, or it was a huge learning curve. It seems simple now, but back then, yeah, it was a lot to take in. And yeah, then I started basically making all my own custom parts, because I figured if I had so much trouble, surely everyone else is having the same problems. So I always get asked this question, and it's sort of, yeah, it's a bit counterintuitive, because I think most people would assume that if you build your own anything, it should be cheaper. Electric skateboard can be cheap, but it also depends what parts you use. So you could build an electric skateboard using the cheapest stuff, and it will work, and it will be probably okay. As people learn more and become more educated about battery technologies, about motor controller technologies, about safety mechanisms to protect hardware, things like temperature cutoff, current control, those things that protect your hardware, because even the cheap hardware is still a couple of $100, and if you don't have systems in place to protect it from self-damaging, the couple of $100 that you spent on the cheap stuff could go up in smoke. So I talk a lot about the false economy, and I think a lot of people will tell you, especially people who have built one or two boards, that most people will build the cheap one first, then they'll learn from their mistakes, and then they'll upgrade a few parts. Maybe they'll get better motors, or maybe they'll get a better motor controller, or perhaps a better charger for their lipos, or perhaps instead of using lipos, they'll look at like a lithium ion system with a BMS. So there's a natural progression of parts that you can go through, and as you progress, the price goes up. The cost of a BMS, you need to add that to your batteries. Motor controllers like the ESK8, fortunately the price has come down a little bit on the ESK8, so it's become really attractive. Good quality motors aren't cheap. Some of the cheaper motors have quality issues, and some, like from my experience, you can get good ones and bad ones. The thing is, when you buy, say you go to Hobby King and you buy a motor, to make it work on an electric skateboard, you need to modify it straight away. You need to modify the axle, you need to cut the wires, extend them. You're modifying it straight away. So essentially your warranty goes out the window. Where if you buy like an R-Spec motor, it's already modified. It's in its state that it needs to be in to connect it to your skateboard. So your warranty is intact. You've got a warranty. We know that you're using that motor on an electric skateboard, and we warrant it for that use. Where a Hobby King motor that gets modified and gets adapted to an electric skateboard, if that fails, it could be problematic trying to argue that it was a manufacturing fault versus user error. So is it cheaper to build your own electric skateboard? Yes, it is. Should you try to build the cheapest one you can? Maybe for your first one. For your second one, maybe not. I think it makes more sense to invest in better stuff and make a better board. If you pull up next to a guy on his boosted board and you're on your self-built board, you want to make sure that you're riding along and there's no problems. You don't want the boosted board guy going, your thing failed. You build it yourself, it's rubbish. You want to be able to know that the hardware and the technology that you have in your home built board is equal or better than the mainstream commercial brands. So yeah, think about that when you plan your next build. You don't have to go over the top. And the other thing is with batteries, for instance, you can use lipos, which are very cheap, but if you want really big capacity, obviously the price goes up with capacity. So that's another thing. People don't necessarily think about the cost per watt hour. I could make the Space Cell battery, which we sell, it's 270 watt hours. I could make it smaller and it would be half the price. So you got to sort of think about what are you actually getting for your money as well. So but for me, I don't think you want a smaller battery. The ability to jump on your skateboard and ride for an hour, I think is something that most of the mainstream manufacturers have really, they haven't bothered to think about that. That's battery life is important. So for me, I like a big battery. Use parts that you can afford, but get better quality stuff. If you can't afford dual motors, go a single motor, but get a bigger one. Yeah, so try not to build the cheapest board. Try to build a board that you know stacks up well against the mainstream offers, and build one that has the latest technology. Use a VESC because it has current control, so you won't damage your motor from having it draw too much current. Battery current control, so you won't overdraw power out of your battery. It manages it. Temperature cutoff, so it can't really overheat, which protects itself. Voltage cutoff to protect your battery once again. So yeah, that you don't get that stuff really in a motor controller from the hobby store, unless it's a very, very expensive one. So yeah, a few things to think about there. To make the best electric skateboard, there are a few key things that you should do. Over-engineer everything. So that means work out what you think you might need, and then get something better. Cases of people destroying their own hardware, and it's generally, you'll be going up that hill and your motor overheats and melts the insulation on the wires, and then that shorts out, and then it blows up your ESC and could potentially damage other bits and pieces or catch fire. So yeah, I recommend big motors. The bigger the motor, the more heat, the more mass it has, and the more mass, the more heat it can hold and dissipate. More powerful. Like when I first started trying to work out how to make a powerful motor, what makes a motor more powerful or better, and the simple rule with motors is the bigger the better. And in terms of batteries, I don't like lipos for electric skateboards. The problem with the lipo is you need to understand it. You need to care for it like a baby nearly. It's volatile. Batteries are, very dense in energy, and if something goes wrong with them, they basically catch fire. Any battery can catch fire if you treat it wrong, but certain battery technologies are a bit more robust. For instance, in the space cell we have LG batteries. So LG, everyone knows the Korean company LG, I hope. They make batteries, and one of the batteries is 18650. It's a little cylindrical cell that's 18 millimeters wide. They rarely go out of balance. So even though there's a circuit in there inside the battery to manage the cell groups to make sure they're balanced, they tend not to go out of balance anyway. So that's a really big thing to think about. Lipos, on the other hand, are notorious for getting out of balance. Most people have 6 cell or higher lipo batteries on their self-built electric skateboards, and in a lipo you've got to balance charge it. From my experience, the cells in a lipo, they're never perfectly balanced. Even after balance charging, you'll discharge it once and you'll look at the cells and they'll be out of balance. So the rate at which they discharge is not equal across the battery. So one cell discharges quicker than another. The problem with this is it can, over time, cause you problems in terms of a battery being discharged, or a cell in a battery being discharged too far. The others might be up here, and one cell is bad and it drops down, and that can be where you have problems. Firstly, the performance of your board is going to be terrible because the voltage is lower, but Also, trying to charge that might be a problem. If the cell is bad, and if you're not really a experienced LiPo battery user, you're just getting into this, it's your first LiPo battery, you might not really think it's a bad thing. Plug it in, go off, do your homework, whatever, go and cook dinner, and there could be a problem where that cell basically catches on fire or something like that happens, and it's you'll have a big fire from a LiPo battery. Doesn't have a protective circuit in there to manage any of this stuff. It's literally just cells with two leads coming out of it for discharging, and depending on how many cells there is, each cell group will have a balanced lead. So there's no circuitry in there to protect it. The charger that you use is what manages the battery. Now, that charger, you're only using it when you're charging. It's not on the skateboard itself. So when you're discharging a LiPo on your skateboard, there's no management there. It could actually short out and dump a huge amount of current instantly. So, you know, that's why we use things like a fuse on our systems, because any battery can short circuit and dump a whole lot of current and send sparks flying, and things can catch on fire. But having a fuse in there could help prevent that damage from occurring. So yeah, so LiPos are the most simple form of battery. There's no protection circuits, there's no fuses, they're just a battery, nothing else. So you've got to be careful, and in my preference, I would just say avoid them. They're a pain because of the charges as well. You know, it's not just a nice little plug that you plug in. It's literally, well, 3 plugs generally. So the balance lead and the 2 discharge leads, and that goes into your charger, which you then have to program, choose what setting you want. So a balance charge or a normal charge or whatever, you select that. And some of them don't even have a plug to plug it into the wall, so you need a power adapter. So you have all these contraptions where something like a custom made battery for an electric skateboard, like the Space Cell, you just plug like a laptop charger into it and it just charges, and when it's charged, that's it. It has a little LCD and it just tells you it's charged. You can see exactly how much power is in it. So that is one way to get a really good quality skateboard build, a custom made battery. Future for electric skateboards is very interesting. What we'll see is many no-name brands, I guess you would call them, coming out of China. So the factories in China have finally caught on to the electric skateboard popularity that's growing worldwide. I think boosted boards definitely put electric skateboards on the scene with their Kickstarter and their TED Talks, and ever since then everyone's been, you know, trying to catch up to what they're doing. There's been a few other successful campaigns. One of the more recent very successful ones was Starry. It was a Chinese based campaign, and these guys have done some really interesting things that no one's seen, like making a hub motor with a planetary gear inside it, which basically means you can amplify the torque mechanically. So a normal motor is just a 1-to-1 ratio, so there's no mechanical advantage. That's why in a lot of skateboards that you'll see people with now, they have a belt and it drives the wheel. So that's a mechanical advantage for the motor. You can take a motor that spins at 10,000 RPM and reduce it down to 3,000 RPM as an example, and in doing that you can increase the torque of that motor. So what Starry did was they put a planetary gearbox, essentially, which is a gear with 3 inside it that spins around, and it reduces the RPM of the motor and makes the wheel spin with increased torque at a slower RPM, and that was really impressive. Their product's not out yet. It's maybe due fairly soon, I think, for the backers of that campaign. So it'll be really interesting to see. One of the negative points, I would say, from a planetary gear hub motor like that is they're more noisy, and I think the maintenance side of things could be problematic. We'll know soon. But yeah, what this is meaning is these Chinese factories, which for manufacturing and for innovation and development and rapid development, China, no one can beat China. China can take concepts that they see all over the place, and they can make ready to roll products within months, and they're generally getting really good quality as well. The problem with the Chinese manufacturing industry is there's a copycat industry. So one Chinese factory will make a product, and then the other Chinese factory, whether they get a product and just copy it or they just look at pictures, but they're very, very rapid. So it's like an avalanche effect. One factory does it, then 2 factories, then 4, and then eventually what happens, you have maybe 10 different factories all producing things that look basically the same. To the consumer, you might not even be able to tell the difference between some of these future boards that we'll see, and that is a problem. In the next few years, you'll have these products that all look very similar, and it's happened before. It will happen again. You just have a look at the early Evolve skateboards and Fick branded skateboards. They were all the same. They all had these big brushed DC motors and gigantic battery packs on them, and the same wheels and the same sort of decks, and they were all the same controllers that look like a gun. Do you remember those? And that will happen again with this new evolution, this new generation of electric skateboards that are using small brushless outrunner motors, lithium ion batteries, sleek decks. There's going to be lots of them. Prices are going to come down as well. The problem with that is what tends to happen is like a race to the bottom. The factories will all produce something pretty okay, probably initially. None of these factories want to produce low quality stuff. They want to produce a good quality product that they can sell lots of and not have any problems. That's their intention initially. What happens is these products gather momentum in Western societies, and companies like Inertian or any startup company that wants to be an electric skateboard company can go to these factories in China and say, okay, I want a truckload of these things. I want you to do it at a lower price, 1,000 of them at $200. So the Chinese factories basically need to decide whether they want to lower their quality standards and get a sale, or maintain higher quality and lose the sale. And most of the factories will take a sale. They will cut corners if they can. Same thing happened with the hoverboards. I've heard stories of the batteries being opened up and just finding sand, like little cylinders full of sand. Cheap motors, they'll take parts out of the motor. They'll use cheaper bearings. They'll use softer stainless steel for the shaft. They'll use magnets that are not rated for the temperatures, or just weak magnets, not really good magnets for a motor, and that will cause problems. If the stator, the silicon steel in the stator is not good, you'll have overheating problems. You know, there are 100 ways to make a cheap electric skateboard, and in China, if the pressure gets put on them for price because of popularity explosion, that, you know, they'll come down in price, but the quality will as well. Yeah, the thing that I really believe will happen though, and what I want to see happen, is the builders movement. I want that to grow. I want people to realize that they can build really good electric skateboards at home. The beauty of this concept, and it's not any different than when I was a kid and I wanted a skateboard. I would go and I would buy the deck that I wanted. You know, they're all up on the wall. You choose that deck, that one there, mate, grab that. And then I know what wheels I want. I want that one because of the size of it, or because of the color, or the shape. You know, you, as a skateboard rider, you develop your own style and you develop your own requirements, and you walk into a skateboard shop and you pick the stuff. I want those trucks. I want those bearings. I need, you know, I need that grip tape. You can fully customize it. So that's what I believe will happen with electric skateboards. That's what I will be pursuing, because I want people to be able to make any skateboard electric and make it really bloody good. So their deck, nice wheels, trucks that are really sweet, with the electronics, slimline electronics, any deck, okay, any deck. I'm not talking, you know, like the Mellow boards. They have a really cool Kickstarter campaign that was successful last year, and they've just brought out a new version of their product, and the concept here is really cool. It allows you to basically build your own skateboard with whatever deck you want. But the problem is the mount, the way their electronics are mounted. It uses the truck mount, the rear truck mount, or the front one, I suppose. But you can't have a deck that drops down. So the deck has to be flat. So from where the truck mounts to the underbody of the deck has to be basically flat. Now, as you know, skateboards are not always perfectly flat. I've got quite a few in there that have just a micro drop like this, just to lock your feet in, which feels really nice, but that would prevent their system going on there. So I think a system needs to be developed which has your battery and everything that can go on any deck, just in the middle of any deck. And yeah, so that's what I want to happen. I want people to be able to go to the skate shop, pick out their deck, pick out trucks, wheels. You know, obviously not all wheels are going to work on an electric skateboard due to the height, and you know, some wheels need to have a wheel pulley and stuff like that. So there will be some limitations, but the things that you can choose, you should be able to choose. You should be able to build your own unique electric skateboard, and that's what Inertian's going to focus on. That's what we're all about. We will make our own complete boards as well. There's something I think that people want. They don't necessarily. There are people who want electric skateboards who don't really care about what deck they want. So you know, we'll have complete electric skateboards, and you know, it's just done. It's in a box. So yeah, that's where I see it. High quality, complete customization, really reliable, fast, being able to climb hills. You know, if the thing is with an electric skateboard, Like it's pretty obvious, but if you're on flat or if there's a decline, you don't need an electric skateboard. You can actually roll. Skateboards are really efficient. You can roll down hills really well. So the only reason you need an electric skateboard is if there's a lot of flat grounds and you want to travel a long distance. Electric skateboard's great. You don't have to push. Or if there's a hill, you need to go up the hill. And I'm not talking a small little incline. I'm talking a hill. You need to be able to go up a hill on your skateboard. Now, if a skateboard can't go up a hill, and if an electric skateboard can't go up a hill, what's the point of it? You need to be able to go up hills. So, I'm a bit worried that some of these single motor systems running on lower voltage and, they might not be that practical for a lot of people. So you need to think about that. Electric skateboards, they need to go up inclines. They need to be able to drive for, an hour or more. And you need to be able to have your choice of wheels, at least maybe at the front, if not the back, depending on if you've got hub motors or satellite motors. Your own deck, your own trucks, all those sorts of things.